Yo, what's going on with y'all, man? And what man's for the females? Hey, in today's video, we have the introduction to the PowerPoint of Kemetic spirituality, where I will be breaking down what Kemetic spirituality actually is and how it's practiced, all that stuff. This PowerPoint is 110 slides. On YouTube, I'll give out the introduction slides, but Patreon, you guys will get this whole entire PowerPoint. By the time YouTube sees this, you can actually go to my Patreon and find the whole entire PowerPoint already listed. I'm going to make a playlist, aka a collection. They call it a collection on Patreon. I'm going to put all the videos inside of there for Kemetic spirituality. I'll make more videos in the future also about Kemetic spirituality. The more in-depth stuff will be for Patreon. Y'all know how I do. YouTube, you guys will get like the basic stuff, you feel me? It's still going to be some sauce for sure, but let's get right into this PowerPoint. I'm going to start it on this side because when I'm on this side, I have less of a chance to cover up some of the words. Like for this slide, I'm covering the words, but for slides like these and stuff like that, you know what I'm saying, I'm not really covering the words like that. So let's go back to the introduction slide. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, so I first want to talk about what the purpose of this PowerPoint even is. The purpose of this PowerPoint is to bring clarity to the very misunderstood topic of Egyptian spirituality. Many people believe that the Egyptian gods and goddesses were actual beings which the Egyptians worshipped and treated as real entities. However, this actually cannot be further from the truth. Now, I do want to say there actually was a certain point in history where the Egyptians did start worshiping their gods as actual beings because they did get manipulated by certain entities. But this comes during the degradation of Kemetic spirituality because the original Egyptians understood the practices. It only happened that there was different people coming into Egypt and they were bringing in their own forms of worship and stuff like that. And the people who started taking power in Egypt were not the same people who made the Egyptian system. And because of this, the people who inherited Egypt without understanding the system, they were easily manipulated by entities who would pose as the deities. But originally, the Egyptians did not worship them as actual beings. The Egyptians wrote down in their own scriptures that the deities that they worked with were not actual beings, but rather symbolic personifications of different aspects of themselves, as well as nature and the whole entire cosmos. Because of this misunderstanding, this PowerPoint will go into the many facets of Egyptian spirituality. So that way we can understand what they truly practice, what the deities actually represented, as well as how other people should approach, understand, and practice Egyptian spirituality and philosophy. Now, here is the structure of this PowerPoint. This PowerPoint will be structured into 8 sections, which cover different aspects of Egyptian spirituality, including its different philosophies and theologies. These sections are Introduction to Sematwa. I might be saying that wrong, but Introduction to Sematwa, which means Kemetic yoga. Introduction to Shetwat Netter, which is the Kemetic mysteries. This video will likely focus on these two. You know what I'm saying? And then we'll do the next ones later. So YouTube, if you're seeing this video, you guys will get these slides right here to get the introduction, but the full in-depth breakdown of every single theology, bro, that's Patreon exclusive. Y'all know how I do. So those are the first two. The third one is Introduction to Anunian Theology. This is a theology that focuses on the deity Ra. Introduction to Hecapata Theology. This is the aka Memphite theology. This is the theology that focuses on Ptah. Introduction to Theban theology. That is a theology which focuses on a. Introduction to Asarian theology. This is a theology which focuses on Asar, aka Osiris, and Introduction to Goddess Theology that focuses on the goddesses, and last but not least, Introduction to My Philosophy. I should have put that John right here probably because it's actually coming right after these two. But yeah, Introduction to My Philosophy. This philosophy kind of underlies all the Kemetic theologies anyway. You guys will see that later on inside this PowerPoint. So here are some resources which have been used. The main resources used in this PowerPoint comes from number one, my own personal experience of studying and working with the ancient Kemetic system, as well as two books from the Kemetic priest and author Dr. Mawada Ashby. These books are number one, Egyptian Yoga, The Philosophy of Enlightenment, and then number two, Egyptian Mysteries Volume 2. This is what the book look like down here, you feel me? But yeah, it's called Egyptian Mysteries Volume 2, Dictionary of Gods and Goddesses. This book's about the mystery of Neteru, the gods and goddesses of Egypt, etc., etc. So, with that being said, right, there are more books that he makes, which goes in depth into every theology, but I didn't really pull from those books. I only pulled from these two books pretty much, as well as my own experience. Once again, I gotta give credit where credit is due. I'm not gonna come up on here and say some shit that comes from the book and act like I said that shit. Like, fuck no. You feel me? So understand that this is a mix of what this guy was talking about as well as my own experience, which aligns with these two books. All right, let's get into it. Introduction to Sematwa, aka Kemetic Yoga. Boom. So Sematwa is the Kemetic, Sematwa is the term for Kemetic yoga. This term will be defined more specifically later on inside this PowerPoint. Ancient Kemetic spirituality is actually a yogic system, with Kemet actually being the birthplace of all forms of yoga, which we know nowadays. This is true. The yoga in India came from Egypt. Okay, we're not debating that. If you want to debate that, it's a whole separate video. Honestly, I don't really care to debate. Either you believe me or not, nigga. When we dive into Kemetic spirituality and the deeper mysteries like Shetsuwat Neter, it is important to remember that everything the Egyptians practiced was a form of yoga, which means to reunify the higher and lower self, or it was meant to reunify the higher and lower self. And here's a picture of an Egyptian woman in a yoga stretching pose. You feel me? Because yoga and stretching are two separate things, but there are stretches that are yogic in nature. Pretty much, there are certain stretches and poses which can help you to unify with a certain. Usually, the different poses were aligned with different deities, and those deities are parts of you. So if you did a certain pose, it would help you to unify with that part of you. I want to make myself a bit smaller real quick. All right, cool. Boom. I look kind of ugly right now. I ain't gonna cap, but it's okay, nigga. Anyway, let me stop. The deeper meaning of the term Sematwa. So Sema means union, while Twa means of the two lands. Hence, Sematwa means union of the two lands. And I want to say real quick, this is why I say I pulled from the book. Without the book, I would not have known this shit. You feel me? So I'm not going to stop every time something comes from the book. Just understand that a lot of this shit comes from the books as well. It's pretty much from the books mixed with what I already know. You feel me? So understand that. So if you guys want to get even deeper with this shit, bro, just buy the books for yourself. The two lands being referred to by the term Sematwa are Upper and Lower Egypt, which are supposed to refer to the higher and lower self. Real quick, here's a symbol, right, for Sematwa. You know what I'm saying? I'll break this down a bit later because I break down the picture inside this slide. With this new understanding, we can now see that on an even deeper level, Sematwa is literally a term that's supposed to mean the union of the higher and lower self, because the two lands are Upper and Lower Egypt, which are the higher and lower self, right? So Sematwa literally means it literally means the union of the higher and lower self, which is literally what yoga is. This is why the Kemetic symbol for Semitwa is a picture of Heru, aka the higher self, tying up the Sema symbol with the help of Set, the lower self on the other side. So this is what I said right here, right? Inside this picture, you see Heru, the higher self, and this is the symbol for Sema. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to represent the lungs because when you actually breathe, it helps to unify the higher and lower self. Because think about it like this: breathing is a function that happens automatically, but you can also control it. So controlling it is using your consciousness to control instinctive function. You're using the higher. You are literally using the higher self to unify with the lower self. That's what this symbol means. They're tying the knot. They're unifying themselves, right? That's what that picture means. It's the symbol for Semitwa. Oh yeah, I put it down right here. The Sema symbol is actually the union of two lungs in the trachea. So Heru and Set tying this symbol together is supposed to show that the higher self and lower self are unified through the control of one's breath and one's life force energy. Of course, there's more that goes into unifying the two, but one way to unify them is actually through the breath because you're controlling an instinctual function, lower self, with your consciousness, the higher self. You see? So, what is yoga truly, and how does one practice yoga? So, yoga in Sanskrit is a term that means union, which means that yoga is the practice of unifying back to the divine. You're unifying your lower nature back to your higher nature. Right here it shows it. You know what I'm saying? Yoga means union. There are many different parts of a human which need to be unified back to the divine, which is why many systems of yoga have been developed. The main 5 systems of yoga are: number 1, yoga of wisdom; number 2, yoga of devotion; number 3, yoga of action; number 4, yoga of meditation; number 5, yoga of life force cultivation. So yoga of wisdom is for your mind and it's for your intellect, right? Yoga of devotion is for your emotions. Yoga of action is literally for your physical body. Yoga of meditation Yoga of meditation helps to cultivate your willpower and your consciousness and your ability to focus. And yoga of life force cultivation is for unifying your life force back with the divine. So understanding yoga of wisdom, which yoga of wisdom is very heavily headed by the deities of the Chudi as well as the Set, aka Isis. Yoga of wisdom. Yoga of wisdom is used to unify one's mind and thoughts back to the divine. This is done by studying wisdom teachings and reflecting on them, eventually being able to intuitively experience the transcendental wisdom behind the teachings which you are studying. These 3 steps are referred to as: number 1, listening. This is hearing or reading a wisdom teaching. Number 2, reflection. Constantly thinking about the wisdom teaching and the deeper meaning behind it. Number 3 is meditation. That is when you intuitively unify with the wisdom teaching and understand the deeper transcendental wisdom which is behind the basic teaching. So the teaching is the exoteric, right? But then the understanding that comes from unification is when you actually are able to realize the esoteric meaning. Like with the Bible, right? You read the Bible, you see the exoteric, but you need to actually reflect on the teachings and unify with them in order to understand the esoteric. Same with Egyptian spirituality. That's why a lot of people, they read the myths and they think about, oh, these are actual beings. No, that's the exoteric. You see? The esoteric is when you realize that it's talking about different parts of yourself. Facts. Yoga of devotion, right? Yoga of devotion, also known as the yoga of divine love, is the practice of purifying and unifying one's emotions and feelings back to the divine. I'll be right back. Hold up, I got to do something real quick. All right, boom. So how does this work though, right? How does yoga of divine love help to purify and unify one's emotions and their feelings back to the divine? Well, this is done by having people learn about the Kemetic myths and eventually forming an emotional bond with different deities and also performing rituals for them, which will eventually lead to a feeling of devotion and emotional oneness with the divine. The three steps are referred to as listening, hearing or studying a myth, as well as the deities involved with it. Number two is ritual. Begin developing an emotional connection with the deity and perform rituals for them, such as offerings, acting like, which is could be seen as acting like the divinity, as well as chanting, singing, and communing, talking to this part of yourself as if it was separate, right? Then mysticism, when you begin to emotionally melt into the divinity. So, for example, you know how like with the Bible, right? You have that ritual where you eat the when you eat the body and blood of Christ through the bread and the wine. That is used for yoga of devotion, because when you eat the body and you drink the blood, right? When you eat the bread and drink the wine, right? It's supposed to invoke a certain. Hold up, I just got a text. My bad. But yeah, when you do that ritual of drinking that wine and eating that bread, it's supposed to build a certain feeling of devotion to Christ, which is meant to help you unify with Christ. That's why they do that. It's literally an act of yoga of devotion. Facts. All right, let's get to the next slide. Understanding yoga of action. Yoga of action is the yogic practice of unifying one's actions back to the divine. This is done through having a person studying Mat philosophy, like they study the ethics of it, the law of cause and effect, the 42 precepts of Mat, which will allow a person to have more wisdom on what is right and what is a wrong action. After learning the philosophy, a person is tasked with actually practicing Mat by doing quote unquote right actions and developing more virtue in their life. This is supposed to lead to an eventual devotion to the divine and unification with Mat, which is divine justice and virtue. So, while practicing right actions, you also can naturally experience devotion. And you're going to realize that oftentimes the different yogas interact with each other, which is called integral yoga, which I'm pretty sure I described later on inside this PowerPoint. So the four steps are referred to as: number one, learning, studying Mat philosophy; number two, practice, following the teaching of Mat through right action and cultivating virtue inside your life; number three, devotion, becoming devoted to Mat through worship and offerings, aka Matian actions, actions that align with Mat; and then number four is meditation, becoming fully unified and one with Mat, cosmic order, divine justice, divine virtue, right action, all that stuff. So that's yoga of action. Let's get to yoga of meditation. Yoga of meditation is the yogic practice of unifying your consciousness, focus, and willpower back to the divine. While there are many forms of meditation for the other yogic systems, like wisdom meditation, devotion meditation, serpent power meditation, yoga of meditation is specifically practiced by having the practitioner get into a meditative posture and then learning to focus and concentrate one's awareness to such an extent that they are able to perceive their own divine nature. And this is like true meditation. You feel me? So this was done in three steps referred to as: number one, concentration. When one gets into a posture and begins concentrating on either their breath, images, and or mantras and affirmations. The best one would be the breath, but you also would do it with images. Like if you're going to use images and mantras, in Egypt, you usually used images of a certain deity and mantras associated with that deity to unify with that deity specifically, to unify with that part of yourself. But yeah, that's the first step. Second step is extended concentration. This is when one's meditation becomes a bit easier. Concentration happens naturally, and there's a sense of becoming unified with the object of focus, whether it's a mantra, image, breath, whatever, which allows the meditation to flow. Number three is transcendental consciousness, when one goes beyond concentrating on the object, even if it's nothing. Because you could try to focus on nothing, but you even go beyond nothing, and you begin to experience and merge with your true divine nature. So that's yoga of meditation. Yoga of life force cultivation. Yoga of life force cultivation, also known as serpent power yoga, is the yogic practice of unifying your life force energy back to the divine. All other forms of yoga naturally do this. Like, for example, yoga of wisdom purifies the mind as well as the mental life force. Yoga of devotion purifies the emotional life force. You know what I'm saying? So that's why no matter what yoga you practice, you are naturally practicing serpent power yoga. When doing the specific practices, though, which are associated with serpent power yoga, there are three main steps. Number one, purification. This involves purifying the body, emotions, thoughts, etc. through the other forms of yoga. Number two is cultivation. This involves cultivating life force energy through chakra work as well as practices like qigong and tai chi. Number three is spiritual transcendence, when your life force energies peak, leading to an explosion of bliss and energetic unification back to the divine. Here's what I was talking about, integral yoga. Here's the importance of integral yoga. While practicing a certain form of yoga, it is important to remember that all of the yogas should be practiced in a balanced and integral fashion. This integral way of practicing yoga is called integral yoga. It is common for people to notice that at different periods of life, they need to develop different aspects of themselves, whether it's their mind, their emotions, their energy, etc. Because of this, the Kemetics weren't opposed to focusing on one main form of yoga. They just advise that people take into account their whole, I put mind, body, spirit, but it's really soul, body, spirit complex, and use discernment to decide what forms of yoga you need to practice. So although integral yoga is important, it is okay to focus on just one form if you only need that one form. But even when doing that one form, you usually include other yogas. For example, no matter what yoga you do, there's going to always be serpent power yoga because you're purifying your life force energies. Also, most of the yogas, if not all of them, contain some form of meditation. Like when you meditate on the wisdom teachings, right? So they usually interact with each other anyway. One of the I already said this. One of the beneficial aspects of how yoga is practiced is that it's naturally integral. While reading myths for practicing yoga of devotion, you naturally grow in wisdom as you understand the deeper aspects of the myth. While practicing yoga of wisdom, you naturally practice yoga of meditation as you begin to penetrate deeper into the meaning of the wisdom teachings which you're studying. And of course, while practicing all these yogas, you are naturally doing serpent power yoga since you are purifying different life force energies and cultivating more divine life force energy. Understanding how to perceive the Kemetic mysteries. Many people have failed to understand the true mysteries of ancient Kemet, constantly confusing yogic myths with real life stories and events that they think supposedly happened in Kemet. As we can see, ancient Kemet practiced sematwa, which is yoga, meaning that their ultimate goal with their mythology was to convey stories and lessons to the practitioner, which would allow them to reunify back to the divine. The gods and goddesses, along with their myths, are not beings or stories based on true events. This understanding should be kept in mind as we go deeper into the Kemetic mysteries, penetrating their true meanings and understanding. Oh, my fault. Penetrating their true meanings and understanding the divine wisdom which is being conveyed. And I thought I was gonna cover both of these, but this video is already 25 minutes, so I'm gonna end this video right here. I love you all. Catch you in my next video. Peace the freak out.